I'm curious to hear your thoughts, panel members, about what the future holds for the early childhood field. What are the biggest changes you see? You've mentioned a couple of those already. And what do you imagine early childhood might have as its greatest impact in the coming years? And how will what you've done in Chicago, what they've seen in Chicago, make a difference at the federal, national level?
Probably each of us would answer that differently, and we ought to try that. From my point of view, I think the most important thing in the future is to improve the quality of the people who are working with our children and to make known as widely as we can what the difference is between high quality and not such good quality. Early education suffers from the same variation in quality that all education, all public education, and not as much private education suffers from. But I think as Barbara has said, we feel that we've created something here at Erikson where we are constantly improving what we do. We're constantly looking for new ways that we can teach our students to do their jobs better, and we want to bring that out to as many people as we can. But I think that we are only one institution. There are many others that need to be doing the same kind of thing, and this is what we have to do, is we have to, from my point of view, the most important task we have is to improve the quality of the people who are in those classrooms, who are teaching those children who Barbara just mentioned.
Well, and I think that continuing to fund pre-K is important, but I'll have to give my friends over here with birth to 3 a hand for making the rest of us alert to the fact that it makes a difference how we take care of little babies. I think there's been a tendency to see preschool as the main focus of attention, but Early Head Start now has shown us that we can go to scale, providing programs for very, very young children, like birth to age 3, and that if we do, we will have better success in our pre-K programs. So I think we're going to see an extension of birth to 3 programs over the next 10 years.
And I think it's, I see this as a catalyst for a real, I hope, I'm being optimistic here, Pollyanna-ish, a real snowballing effect. There really is this critical mass of scientific and economic research that's come out in the last 10, 20 years that that strongly makes the case that that we have to do this if we really care about the achievement gap later. And I just want to go back to our very first question, which is, when you were being a little bit pessimistic, there was also a pretty unprecedented increase in the traditional avenues for early childhood funding in Washington, Head Start, Early Head Start, and the Child Care and Development Block Grant. The early childhood field said, that's fabulous, and they sort of went like this, and they said, we're done. And it was only some others that came in and said, well, what about, and it was the leadership of the president and Arnie Duncan and Barbara that said, well, what about some of these traditional education, K through 12 funding streams? So it wasn't until sort of belatedly that people started saying, hey, wait a minute, if we're talking about this from cradle to career, then we really need to start opening up these K through 12 funding streams to early education too, because it benefits the K through 12 system. So I see this all as sort of triggering greater momentum in the future as more people recognize this. Middle-class families have already recognized both the social emotional benefits of early education. I think it's just a matter of time before that really becomes pervasively known.
Hear, hear. That's correct. There was a $5 billion increase in the stimulus package. Unfortunately, we face a cliff in the budget going forward, but we'll fix that. I'm going to take you into the weeds a minute to answer your question. Let's go back to all of these different sort of silos that Cornelia described, and we've talked about, so you'll walk out saying, I still don't know what early childhood is. Is it childcare? Is it Head Start? Is it Early Head Start? Is it preschool? And the answer is that it's all of the above, but you've got childcare that's a $20 billion program, maybe $16 billion, close to a $10 billion Head Start program. States have their own preschool program. Ours is a few $100 million. And then there, what?
IDEA.
Right, I'm not even going into that. I'm talking about your basic prevention programs that are not, where the dollars aren't being spent spent necessarily efficiently or effectively. So I think the opportunity of this administration is something that's a little bit intangible, and we will only make incremental progress, but that's what we do in Washington. And that is by having the voice. Oh, and by the way, the Department of Ed for prevention programs has no money in it except Title I. But the fact that it's being driven by education is really a good thing, because it's going to force all of the other programs to work together to think about how we can communicate better about what early childhood development can do for kids.
The one other thing I think is worth noting is that the SHIP program has now guaranteed that every child can have health care. And that's made an enormous amount of difference in our programs, where the state pre-K budget doesn't permit us to do the things that Head Start does, which is obtain health care for all children, no matter how poor they are. The only hope I see is if we can get the legislature to bite the bullet and come up with a plan that funds the social services. But it's not just state pre-K that is in trouble, but all the Department of Children and Family Services, the Health Department, all of the social services are in the same bind. And they're all using stimulus money now. When that runs out, unless the state steps in, we will have to start cutting programs and cut them sharply.
Let me just say one thing. Government dollars come down and they go to private sector organizations. Preschool money can go to your church or your synagogue, okay? Number one. Number two, poor families, we have a full employment society today. We all agree on that. Everybody goes to work. And our poorest families who have received welfare, or we want to see out in the workforce, go out into the workforce, and we give them a very little bit of money to put their children in really horrible, horrible substandard childcare. So in terms of first doing no harm, I think what we have to do is make sure that high quality opportunities are available for all children. Second of all, remember, it's all voluntary.
Yeah, this is a voucher. It's a parent choice system. So they don't have to send their kids anywhere. They can keep them at home. Nobody's forcing early childhood.
Still another point of this too about the intimacy. I don't think that what Harriet was mentioning when she brought that to you up, I don't think that she was suggesting that we're going to take these kids here and we're going to have an intimate relationship with them instead of that taking place at home. The fact is that what goes on in the first few years of life is an intimate relationship, especially in the first months of life. It is an intimate relationship between parent and child. And what early childhood childcare can do is to help parents with their own relationship with their own child. It's not to substitute for their parent. And when they have to give up their child, I don't mean they give it up permanently, when they need child care so they can go to work because of this, because we all are trying to go to work, then the kind of efforts that we make are ones that, that try to reproduce what parents do through the intimate relationship we have with babies and toddlers and older kids. But it doesn't take the place of parents by any means. So it's not meaning to move intimacy out of the family and into a public environment.
Can I just add very quickly? The reality is, in this economy, among low-income parents, something like 75% or 80% need out-of-home care for their child. So that's the reality. You don't have the luxury anymore of where one parent can stay at home and take care of the kids. So they're going to be in some kind of caregiving arrangement. We want to make it good. We want to make it high quality.
One more quick comment on this.
One more quick question. It's almost 3 o'clock.
The only industrialized country in the world. We're the same country who wouldn't learn a foreign language until we woke up and said, oh, gee, we're part of a bigger world. Let's get the message, everybody. There's not another industrialized country in the world that doesn't have a full availability of good maternal child care and early childhood development for their children.
Can I promote the advocacy group of your member of Congress or legislature? That is the most important group that you can contact because they don't hear from you. I'd say advocacy groups are fine, but they always hear from them, and they're sick of hearing from them. I mean, they can't even get a meeting with the members. An advocacy group cannot get a meeting with the members. So that's why they need to hear in a grassroots way from you, and that will make them pay more attention.